Hey, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Luke's Gospel 22, and we're still in the night, the very night that Jesus will be betrayed, and Mark's view of the what we call the Last Supper, and so we're actually he's going to say something and then he's going to move to the garden. Okay. And again, just some astounding revelation in even in that, something that we haven't seen. As I often say, people, the what's called the synoptic gospels, and one of the reasons why I don't, you never see me quote men, and one, because I'm not going to quote somebody when I actually have the Bible in front of me. This is why this is called a daily Bible study, verse by verse. So now I'm reading it for myself, and it was different when you did not have the um, the scriptures on paper for everyone. In fact, that really would not come until about the 16th century. The printing press a couple of centuries before. I think the printing press, and I want to say the first printed Bible somewhere around the 1400s. But it wouldn't be into the 1600s when King James would distribute the Bible to give it to everybody. And I wondered sometimes if he did that just to spite the Catholics, but that's just conjecture. But the point is that um, um, the purpose is that so that you can read. And of course, the problem back then is that illiteracy was very high during that time. You would not, you know, and even now in some parts of the world, illiteracy is not at, let's say, as high as it should be. But so you would depend a lot on the preachers. You would depend a lot on the preachers, and that's why even sometimes you see certain churches where the preacher is preaching, and then they have somebody who is reading, and he would be like, he preaches, and then he'd turn, go ahead, read Matthew 21:1, and they would go, and the Bible says, and he would read it. Well, really, one of those back then, you can even probably ask, was the preacher himself literate? Can he read? So that's just one of the reasons, besides maybe the custom of them doing that. But we can read it. That's my point. We have the scriptures. We can read it, and that's what we're doing. So I don't, I don't look at commentaries in terms of what they think about certain events. So like the synoptic gospels, they would say, well, you know, Mark wrote the gospel, and then Matthew and Luke copied that. And you get all kinds of crazy discussions. That's why, look, they're out there if you want to engage in that. But we have the Bible. We can read it for ourselves. All right, so let's get to it. Luke 22. Here we go. Now, let me go just read this again, because it's verse 31 is kind of where we left off. But he said, Simon, Simon, look out. Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. Now, as I said that when we read this in the last study, where did we see this before? Where the book of Job. Okay, the book of Job. Notice he said Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. And that's kind of amazing. Job was probably 4,000 years, maybe. No, not 4,000. I'm going to say 2,000, over 2,000 years. Um, and Satan is still up to his same tricks. Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, but I've prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. That's a kind of amazing. I will say this, since I brought it up. God is not handing us over to Satan like he did Job. Okay, it's enough to be in this sinful world. We have enough that the Bible tells us to put on the armor of God, that we can stand against the wiles of the devil. So that's the answer to that. In other words, Satan can ask all he wants, but God has equipped us, as Peter himself would later write. The devil, as a roaring lion, is walking around seeking whom he may devour. Resist him. So that's the difference. Job did not have the capability to resist the attacks of the enemy, but we do. So that's the difference. We ought to resist him. Verse 33, Lord, he told them, I'm ready to go with you both into prison and to death. I tell you, Peter, he said, the rooster will not crow today until you deny until you deny 3 times that you know me. So the other gospels, Peter really argued with the Lord, and I oftentimes wonder, why, Peter? Why are you arguing with the Lord? I mean, don't you know who he is? And yet, when he says something, you're going to argue with him. And right here, I think is the failure. He's setting himself up to fail, because how about, Lord, humbling yourself and say, Lord, how can I avoid this? Now, we're going to read later on let me skip down. I'm going to come back. Look at verse 40. It says, when he reached the place, he told them, pray that you may not enter into temptation. Now, I'll come back to that. But no, so again, even then, he's telling them, what do? They're going to sleep. But Peter, again, I think it was his pride, his arrogance. This is the Lord telling you that Satan wants to sift you as wheat. And yet you're arguing with him. Oh, no, Jesus. In another gospel, he tells them, he says, you may. Now, these are here may deny you, but I won't. All right, so verse 35, he says, he also said to them, when I sent you out without money bags, traveling bags, or sandals, did you lack any things? Not a things, they said. Then he said to them, but now whoever has a money bag should take it, and also a traveling bag. And whoever doesn't have a sword should sell his robe and buy one. For I tell you, what is written must be fulfilled in me. He was counted among the outlaws. Yes, what is written about me is coming to its fulfillment. Lord, they said, look, here are 2 swords. Enough of that, he told them. Now, some of the translations here will say that is enough. So the language it can be confusing here, because if Jesus saying enough of that, don't bring that up, or that's enough, you have enough. Now, what Jesus is now changing. Now, if you go back to chapters 9 and 10, he sends out first the 12, and he tells both the same: don't carry any money. And when you enter to a town, stay where you're invited. Don't move from house to house, and don't carry any swords, right? Now he's telling them to do that. And one of the things, especially when you talk about the sword, some people try to interject the Second Amendment in here. Now, I'm not saying either way. For example, when we look at some of the mass shootings that America is plagued with, mostly, we just have more. We have more mass shootings than any other country in the world. So there have been a few occasions when a gunman went into the church and started shooting, and a member or someone authorized that would have a gun took down the shooter. Okay, now, like I say, and thus prevented mass casualties. Okay, and the same here. They had to deal with, for example, when they would travel, we would call them carjackings, but jackings. That if they were traveling, they would get robbed of their goods, supplies. In some cases, the threat of women being raped. So notice then he's saying carry a sword. Now, this wasn't necessarily what we would kind of think of a long sword, um, but maybe something like um, something this length from my elbow to here, like that. Okay. But anyway, whichever, he is telling them, hey, yeah, go ahead, carry a sword, carry money, be careful, and they would, uh, the church would take offerings for them and stuff, especially the apostles when they would go out. A lot of times the church would fund that. Okay. All right. Verse 39, he says he went out, and now we're leaving the upper room here and they're going out to the garden. Okay. And so he said he went out and made his way as usual to the Mount of Olives. And the disciples followed him. And when he reached the place, he told them, pray that you may not enter into temptation. So he's telling them to pray. We're in the garden to pray. Then he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down and began to pray. And then he says, Father, if you are willing, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. And this is a very interesting prayer for Jesus, that he said, if you are willing, take this cup from me. But then he says, nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. So what is this? Jesus, and by the way, when we talk about Jesus, we are saying that he is 100% man, while he is 100% God. Okay, 100% man, while he is 100% God. Right? So I think it's safe to say we're seeing the human side of Jesus. Or even both. Okay? Or even both. But the weight of what he is about to suffer, no doubt, is on him. Okay? Now, verse 43, then an angel from heaven appeared to him, strengthening him. Being in anguish, he prayed more fervently, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground. Now, this is a very powerful imagery here. But however, if I don't know if y'all can see this, the brackets would mean that there is a question, okay, about this phrase being in other manuscripts, okay? But I won't get into, and the way this, when we say this, you have to kind of get into the translation process, so that when you look at when Luke wrote this around AD 55-ish, okay, then as the centuries went on, you had scribes and people writing things, translating, translation, things like that, copying, basically the copies, okay. Then you would have come down this kind of, the question would be, in this set of manuscripts, we don't see this here, but we see it in here. And then when did it appear? Like I said, I'm not going to get too deep into the translation process, but that is why the scholars note this, that there's a question. That's all. It's a question. Okay. So he says, then the angels from heaven, appeared to him, and then notice this though, strengthening him. So this angel comes and he strengthens him. I will say that God strengthens us. Okay, he strengthens us. That we should never be overwhelmed to the point of such disparity. Now, some people do this, but We should never be overwhelmed to that point, because notice God will strengthen you. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. I think I want Second Timothy 4. So look at verse 16. Paul says, "At my first defense, no one stood by me, but everyone deserted me. May it not be counted against them." We're getting ready to see this same statement, well, later on when Jesus says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Verse 17, "But the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, so that the proclamation might be fully made through me, and all the Gentiles might hear." Notice, this should be a comforting to us. No one may stand with you. But notice he said, "The Lord stood with me and strengthened me." When you are going through, when you're going through trials, when you're going through hard times, okay? When you're going through hard times, it always feels like you are alone. If you are sick in the hospital, see, remember, time stops for you. The world is going on, right? The world's going on. If you're in the hospital and you're, whatever the situation may be, it could be terminal, it could not, but, but in some cases, you're in the hospital, and then, again, so time stops for you, but the world, it doesn't. They go to work every day, right? The rest of the world go to work, live their lives. And that's why I never, ever despise hospital visitations. I used to do them for the church. And because sometimes people, you'd be surprised, just like what Paul was saying here, that no one stood with him. Never underestimate you reaching out to people and to encourage them. I don't know if you remember Paul in the book of Acts. Let me see if I can find that one right quick. Let me see if I can find this one. It'd be Acts 28. Let me see if I can find this one. Oh, look here. Now, this is, again, I know when I say this, I always say this, all the scriptures is just exciting to me when I read it. But here is Paul. And the reason why this statement here is very interesting is because Paul had just came out of a very hard time on the boat. The boat, they had, against his advice, they tried to sail on so they wouldn't winter in a certain place, but they just got pummeled by a storm. Paul stood up and, "Brothers, the angel of the Lord has stood by me tonight. He's given me all to you all, so be encouraged. No one's going to die." Then they come to this. When they come to the boat get battered and they all escape to the land, and the islanders treated them well. And Paul even laid hands on one of the elders and healed him. Just one thing after another. But watch this. Verse 14 says, then we found some believers and invited to stay with them for 7 days. And then it says, "And so we came to Rome. Now the believers from there heard the news about us and had come to meet us as far as the Forum of the Apis and the 3 taverns." Now get this. When Paul saw them, he thanked God and took courage. I never, when people if you know people are going through, yeah, call them, visit them, because look here, the great apostle here, notice how he was just encouraged that these people took the time to come and encourage him. And he was encouraged by that. This great man, a great apostle who had just been, who, was ministering to 275 people and healed people and stuff. And then at this moment, he saw them. Because keep this in mind, Paul was in chains. Let's not forget that. All of this, what that we just kind of read right there, Paul was in chains. And even when he said, the Lord stood by me, Paul was in chains. He was in jail. And even though, yeah, he was strong, but you know what? That's that little effort encourage them. So never, if you know that people are going through, if you know that, encourage them. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. And I'll see you in the next study.